Malalayong lugar ang kanilang narating para maghanap buhay. Tulungan ang pamilyang iniwan sa sariling bayan. Yan ang ating mga overseas Filipino worker. Pero dahil sa di pangkaraniwang pangyayaring hatid ay krisis, may ilan sa kanilang nagpasyang umuwi. Pinagyaman ang sariling lupain, nagtayo ng negosyo na kasama sa puhunan ang sipag at tiyaga. Ang mga OFW, maraming sakripisyo, ninanais maging kapaki-pakinabang maging sa kanilang pagbabalik bansa. Sapagkat ang ating mga bagong bayani, Pilipino pa rin sa puso at damdamin.
Pera o chika!
Hindi ako makakatulog pag di ko nalaman kung ano yung chika! May isang aktor, tapos...
At sulap!
Ang inyong pinakabagong gag show.
Dito sa Net25,
Walang iba kundi ang Piso TV!
Kada umaga, sarap ng umaga, magkakasama. Kada umaga, sarap ng umaga, magkakasama. Kada umaga.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching Eagle News International. On tonight's headlines, there will soon be enhanced restrictions regulating the movement of individuals still unvaccinated against COVID-19 in the NCR, as agreed upon by the Metro Manila Council. India extends its COVID vaccinations to teens aged 15 to 18 today after officials tighten restrictions in big cities to avoid a repeat of last year's devastating outbreak. 4 days of intense rainfall triggered the floods in Aceh province, according to Indonesia's Disaster Mitigation Agency. And U.S. President Joe Biden reassured his Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelensky, that Washington will respond decisively if Russia moves to invade its pro-Western neighbor, according to a statement from the White House. First in our news, here in the country, there will soon be enhanced restrictions regulating the movement of individuals still unvaccinated against COVID-19 in the National Capital Region, as agreed upon by the Metro Manila Council. Metro mayors unanimously agreed to pass ordinances that will restrict the movement and activities of unvaccinated people in the NCR, which will be under Alert Level 3 until January 15. Let's take a look.
be prohibited in indoor and outdoor alfresco dining in restaurants and other food establishments, and shall likewise be prohibited from leisure or social trips to malls, hotels, event venues, sports and country clubs, and similar facilities in accordance with the guidelines of the Metro Manila local government units and concerned establishments. Ibig sabihin, kung ikaw ay hindi pa bakunado, yung mobility mo ay maraming restriction. Para na rin maproteksyonan ka, ito'y habang meron tayong alert level 3. Any individual and or establishment found to be in violation, ito yung mga penalty and a fine of not less than 20,000 pesos but not more than 50,000 pesos, or imprisonment of not less than 1 month but not more than 6 months.
Abalos also said unvaccinated people should stay at home. They will only be allowed out to buy food, water, and medicine. Individual outdoor exercise is still allowed for all individuals, regardless of vaccination status, age, or comorbidities within the general area of their residence, example, within the barangay, Purok, a subdivision or village, subject to the guidelines of the Metro Manila local government units. Moreover, the unvaccinated are prohibited from indoor and outdoor alfresco dining, as we heard earlier, in restaurants and other food establishments, and from leisure and social trips to malls, hotels, event venues, sports and country clubs, and similar facilities. They are also prohibited to travel via public transportation by land, sea, and air, except for the procurement of essential goods and services. Abalos said these restrictions are only temporary and will only be lifted once the COVID-19 alert level in the NCR is at alert level 2 or below. Staying in the country, the Philippines is now classified high risk for COVID-19 following the increase in cases towards the end of the year, according to a health official. Here's Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere.
Looking at the epidemic curves of our major island groups, the island groups are starting to show sign of increase in cases. Moreover, the National Capital Region, which is the blue line, shows a sharp uptick in cases in the recent weeks. Nationally, we are now at high-risk case classification from low-risk case class in the previous week, showing a positive 2-week growth rate at 222% and a moderate risk average daily attack rate at 1.07 cases for every 100,000 individuals.
The health system's capacity in the region remains to be under 50% utilization, while the national beds capacity is at low risk with total utilization at 18% and intensive care unit beds utilization at 22%. The 5 other regions with positive 1-week growth rate and 2-week growth rate include Region 4A, Calabarzon, Regions 3, 9, 11, and 10. These regions have low to moderate risk case classification. Meanwhile, the Department of Health today reported 497 new recoveries and 4,084 additional cases of COVID-19. Recoveries are now at 2,779,241, or 97.3% of the total 2,855,819 infections since the pandemic began in March 2020. Active cases rose to 24,992, of which 19,552 are mild, 3,051 are moderate, 795 are asymptomatic, 331 are critical, and 1,563 are severe. Of the 4,084 reported cases today, 4,057 or 99% occurred within the recent 14 days, which is December 21 to January 3. As in the previous day, the top regions with most cases in the recent 2 weeks were the National Capital Region with 2,831 or 70% of new infections, Calabarzon 571 or 14%, and Region 3, Central Luzon 273, 7%. The death toll has reached 51,586 with 60 new deaths, representing 1.81% of overall cases. Meanwhile, India extended COVID vaccinations to teens aged 15 to 18 today after officials tightened restrictions in the big cities to avoid the repeat of last year's devastating outbreak.
Actually, because like the adults got the vaccine and the children were waiting for the first dose. So it's finally really great to have your first vaccine and your first dose. It's like a New Year gift for the children.
More than 200,000 people around India died in a huge spring COVID wave that overwhelmed hospitals and crematoriums. Health workers have since administered more than 1.4 billion vaccine doses, but less than half of India's population is fully inoculated, according to government data. Officials have fretted over the arrival of the Omicron coronavirus variant and a sudden rise in daily infections, with some of India's biggest urban centers imposing fresh restrictions last week. New Delhi and tech hub Bangalore are under overnight curfews from 10 p.m. each evening, with bars and restaurants in both cities ordered to operate at half capacity. Mumbai, India's commercial capital, has barred public gatherings of more than 4 people from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. and restricted wedding ceremonies to 50 guests. Meanwhile, Israel began Monday administering the 4th COVID vaccine shots to people over 60 and health workers amid a surge driven by the Omicron variant. Here's the Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett.
That Israel will also begin administering the 4th vaccine to all Israelis aged 60 and above, as well as our wonderful medical workers, 4 months after they've received their last dose.
The Health Ministry on Sunday approved the 4th shot for the over 60s and medical staff 2 days after those with weakened immunity started to take the shot, making Israel one of the first countries to do so. The Health Ministry on Monday reported 6,562 new COVID infections over the previous day, nearly double the daily average of last week. In an address late Sunday, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett warned that cases could soon surge to around 50,000 cases per day. Earlier, the Health Ministry's Director General, Nachman Ash, said Israel could reach herd immunity as Omicron infections mounted and Merck Company's Molnupiravir antiviral pill was approved for use in COVID patients over 18. But the head of the Health Ministry's Coronavirus Task Force, Salman Zarka, said herd immunity was far from guaranteed because experience over the past 2 years showed that some COVID-19 patients who recovered were later reinfected. More than 4 million people out of Israel's population of 9.2 million have received 3 shots of coronavirus vaccine. A total of almost 1.4 million cases of COVID infection, including 8,244 deaths, have been officially recorded in Israel. Meanwhile, Americans returning home from holiday travel had to battle another day of airport chaos, with more than 2,600 flights canceled due to bad weather or airline staffing woes sparked by a surge in COVID cases. As of 10 p.m. local time, or 0300 GMT Monday, more than 2,650 domestic flights or international ones starting or finishing in the U.S. had been canceled, almost as many as the 2,750 scrapped over the course of Saturday, according to the flight tracking service FlightAware. Now, that figure represented well over half of the nearly 4,400 flights canceled around the world. Almost 8,600 U.S. flights were delayed. Southwest Airlines, one of the hardest hit carriers, had to cancel some 400 flights Sunday morning, according to a spokesperson in an email to AFP, adding that it expected further cancellations. Airports in Chicago, a major transit hub, were the most affected Saturday, but by Sunday, the airports in Atlanta, Denver, Detroit, Houston, and Newark were also hard hit. Around the world, air traffic has suffered snarls since December 25 because of airline staffing issues linked to the spread of the highly contagious Omicron coronavirus variant. Many pilots and flight attendants have called in sick after testing positive for the virus or being forced to quarantine due to contact with someone who has the virus. Further disruptions are predicted for Monday U.S. time as a winter storm blows eastward. Storm Frida will continue on a disruptive path eastward, according to meteorologists, bringing snow to a wide swath from Washington, located on the mid-Atlantic coast, up to Boston, Massachusetts in the north. Nearly 1,400 Monday flights have already been canceled within, into, or out of the U.S. Meanwhile, new pediatric COVID hospitalizations have hit a record high in the U.S. as children are increasingly swept up in Omicron's lightning spread. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, almost 199,000 children were reported infected with COVID in the week ending December 23, the last week for which data is currently available, and a 50% rise on figures earlier in the month. The 7-day average of COVID hospital admissions for people aged 0 to 17 was 378 in the week ending December 28, a 66.1% increase on the prior week, and the highest ever figure, surpassing the previous peak is seen during the Delta wave on September 1, per official data. There have been 803 deaths of people aged 0 to 18 from COVID in the U.S., out of more than 820,000 since the pandemic began. Early research out of Hong Kong, based on lab testing of tissue samples, have shown that Omicron replicates up to 70 times faster in the bronchi, the airways leading into the lungs, compared to Delta, which may help explain its extreme spread throughout the population. However, Jim Versalovich, a pathologist and immunologist at Texas Children's Hospital, the largest children's hospital in the U.S., said, if anything, there appears to be a greater proportion of mild pediatric cases linked to Omicron, which is similar to what has been seen in adults. And staying in the U.S. is experiencing almost a vertical increase in the number of new COVID cases, but hospital admissions are not following suit, the White House top pandemic advisor, Anthony Fauci, said. He said, we are definitely in the middle of a very severe surge and uptick in cases. Said Fauci, who called the situation unprecedented as the U.S. reported more than 440,000 new infections Friday. But Fauci said the experience of South Africa, where the strain was first detected in late November and peaked quickly, then subsided almost as quickly, offered some hope. Evidence is mounting, he added, that Omicron is milder than previous variants. The U.S. rates of deaths and hospitalizations have been far lower in recent weeks than during previous COVID surges. And new coronavirus cases in China's lockdown city of Xi'an edged down Monday. Official data showed while local authorities removed 2 senior officials to strengthen their fight against COVID. The northern city of Xi'an, home to the world-famous terracotta warriors, has become the latest epicenter, with authorities ordering all 13 million residents to stay home and several rounds of mass testing in recent weeks. Xi'an reported 90 new virus cases on Monday, down from 122 a day before. Since December 9, there have been more than 1,600 infections reported in the city. On Sunday, Xi'an announced that 2 senior Communist Party officials from the Yantas district had been removed from their posts, according to local media, in a bid to strengthen the work of epidemic prevention and control. Last month, China's disciplinary body announced that dozens of officials were punished for insufficient rigor in preventing and controlling the outbreak. Journalist from Hong Kong media outlet Citizen News. Okay, we have an update coming in from the United Kingdom. Joining us live is Arian Celestino. Hello, Arian.
Hi, Alma. And yes, Britain's health minister insisted Saturday that reimposing coronavirus restrictions in England would be an absolute last resort and that the country must try to live with COVID. Britain is among the countries in Europe hardest hit by the pandemic, with nearly 149,000 deaths. On Friday, it counted almost 190,000 new cases, with an unprecedented daily tally and up nearly 50% week on week. The UK government, which has responsibility for health policies in England only, has so far refused to curb socializing in large events, unlike the rest of Britain. Northern Ireland, Scotland, and Wales have all rolled out new rules during the winter break, limiting gatherings, as the Omicron variant fuels an unprecedented nationwide surge in infections. But Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government in London insists that the data does not yet justify such measures in England, where hospital staff absences due to COVID have more than doubled in a month, and field hospitals are being constructed. Health Secretary Sajid Javid wrote in an article, the Daily Mail newspaper, that curbs on our freedom must be an absolute last resort, and that the British people rightly expect us to do everything in our power to avert them. He also said that he has been determined that we must give ourselves the best chance of living alongside the virus, by noting the enormous health, social, and economic costs of lockdowns. Despite the record rise in infections, there has been a less dramatic rise in numbers admitted to hospital and intensive care units, fueling hopes that Omicron is less severe. Javid vowed that he has been working closely with the NHS to make sure it is ready and resilient for what lies ahead. In England, the government last month mandated mask wearing in most settings, working from home if possible, and a COVID pass system for nightclubs and large events. But it has stopped short of further measures. Instead, it is relying on a stepped-out vaccination program, which saw every adult offered a third dose by the end of 2021. And around 60% of the eligible population is a booster job. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you very much, Arian, for that update. Stay safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me today, reporting from the United Kingdom. I am Arian Celestino. We live in interesting times.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Welcome back. Journalists from Hong Kong media outlet Citizen News decried plummeting press freedoms as they closed today, saying they no longer felt safe to publish after colleagues at a rival publication were arrested for sedition. One of the most popular online news outlets in Hong Kong, with more than 800,000 followers across its social media platforms, Citizen News is the third media outlet to shutter as Beijing oversees a sweeping crackdown on dissent. Let's listen in.
We have not been contacted by the police or national security officers on any matters, but the indications are clear that overall media is facing an increasingly tough environment. What we understood about press freedom has changed a lot, I think, to the extent that we are at a loss of whether, say, there's a new definition of press freedom now.
On their final day operating, reporters made clear their decision was fueled by fears caused by a police raid last week on Stand News. Outspoken tabloid Apple Daily collapsed last year after its assets were frozen and key leaders arrested under a new national security law over the content it published. Stand News closed last week after 7 current and former members were also arrested. Many international media outlets still have Asia headquarters in Hong Kong, including AFP, Bloomberg, The Wall Street Journal, CNN, The Economist, and The Financial Times. Others, such as The New York Times and The Washington Post, moved to or opened new Asia offices in South Korea because of the political situation in Hong Kong. Last month, the Hong Kong administration threatened legal action against The Wall Street Journal and The Financial Times for editorials critical of government policy. To other news now, a strong earthquake struck off the coast of eastern Taiwan Monday evening, according to the Central Weather Bureau, with shaking felt in the capital Taipei, but no immediate reports of damage. The Weather Bureau said the quake measured 6 in the magnitude and hit at the relatively shallow depth of 19 kilometers. The U.S. Geological Survey put the magnitude at 6.2. The epicenter was given in the sea 56 kilometers east of the coastal city of Hualien. The Weather Bureau said no immediate reports of damage had come in. An AFP reporter in Taipei said buildings swayed violently when the tremor struck during the rush hour commute at 5:46 p.m. The shaking lasted for a good 20 seconds, with the ground moving left and right, according to the reporter. Taiwan is regularly hit by earthquakes as the island lies near the junction of two tectonic plates. A 6.5 magnitude quake struck northeastern Yilan in October with minimal damage, in part because it was a depth of 67 kilometers. While Yin, a scenic tourist hotspot, was struck by a 6.4 magnitude earthquake in 2018 that killed 17 people and injured nearly 300. At least 2 people were killed in flash flooding in Iran's southern province of Fars, according to a local official on Monday. 2 people from this province were trapped by water and lost their lives, according to Mehdi Kubyar, deputy head of the Iranian Red Crescent in Fars, telling Young Journalist Club, a news agency affiliated with state television. Meteorological authorities had warned Sunday of heavy rains and floods in southern provinces, including Kerman and Hormozgan. A weather system causing heavy rain is covering Iran's south and several neighboring Arab countries off the Gulf. Torrential rainfall has hit the United Arab Emirates, where its official news agency WAM said bad weather is expected to last until Thursday. Saudi Arabia and Oman were also impacted by the dense weather system, and Kuwait suspended school classes and exams today. Largely arid Iran has been suffering chronic dry spells for years. And 4 days of intense rainfall triggered floods in the Aceh province, according to Indonesia's disaster mitigation agency. Local administrations have declared a 14-day emergency. Temporary shelters have been set up at different locations. And waters are raging through the streets of Aceh province, forcing thousands to leave their homes after days of torrential rains. Take a look.
Makin tinggi. Abang di rumah gimana, Bang? Tidak ada. Tidak ada. Tadi orang-orang makan bagian rendam juga. Rendam. Berarti ini mengungsi, Bang? Mengungsi. Udah ke toko-toko yang mau dibuat tuh. Oh. Ini bantuan sendiri ada nggak, Bang? Kalau bantuan sementara ini kami belum dapat apa-apa. Belum apa-apa.
Local administrations have declared a 14-day emergency. Temporary shelters have been set up at different locations to accommodate those whose homes are underwater. Fatal landslides and flash floods are common across the Southeast Asian archipelago during the rainy season, which started in September. These disasters are often caused by deforestation and poor mitigation planning, according to environmentalists. 7 people were killed in a landslide triggered by torrential storms in Sumatra last month. In April last year, more than 200 people were killed in a cluster of far eastern islands in Indonesia and neighboring Timor-Leste as tropical cyclone Seroja turned small streets to islands. And thousands more people have fled swamped homes as heavy rains exacerbated flooding in 7 Malaysian states, according to officials, with over 125,000 people evacuated in total since mid-December. The National Disaster Management Agency said the weeks-long bout of bad weather was expected to carry on until Tuesday. Dangerous water levels were detected in rivers in at least 5 states, according to a government monitoring website, with rising levels recorded in many other areas. Some 50 people have been killed so far, according to a police Facebook post on Saturday, with 2 still missing. The tropical Southeast Asian nation often faces stormy weather around the year's end, with seasonal flooding regularly causing mass evacuations. Meanwhile, emergency teams on the Spanish island of La Palma began removing hardened lava from La Laguna Cross on Monday. On Saturday, officials finally announced the eruption that destroyed hundreds of homes and large swathes of farmland had ended. The slow-moving lava has covered 1,250 hectares of land as it made its way to the Atlantic. Much of its banana plantations, La Palma's main livelihood, along with tourism. The eruption, which was accompanied by frequent earthquakes, is the first in La Palma since 1971 and the longest on record on the island of around 83,000 people. About 7,000 people have been evacuated from their homes, with many given just minutes to pack their belongings. The damage from the eruption could exceed 900 million euros, according to regional officials. And a huge fire that destroyed a large part of South Africa's parliament has been brought under control, according to firefighters on Monday, a day before a suspect was due to appear in court over the blaze. The fire broke out early Sunday in the oldest wing of the parliament complex, as dozens of crews battled throughout the day to extinguish the flames. Officials said the entire part housing the National Assembly had been destroyed. Earlier, Parliament spokesman Moloto Motapo said the roof of the National Assembly had collapsed and that the fire was so intense in that part of the building that firefighters had been forced to withdraw. No casualties were reported. President Cyril Ramaphosa told reporters at the scene on Sunday that a man had been held and that the building's sprinkler systems had apparently failed. This is where Parliament kept treasures, including around 4,000 heritage and artworks, some dating back to the 17th century. The cause of the blaze is still unknown. Public Works Minister Patricia De Lille said that officials were reviewing CCTV footage. And Sudan's civilian Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok resigned more than 2 months after a coup and following another deadly crackdown on protesters, with the military now firmly in control. Let's listen in.
إنني قد قررت أن أرد إليكم أمانتكم وأعلن لكم استقالتي من منصب رئيس الوزراء، مفسحا المجال لآخر من بنات أو أبناء هذا الوطن المعطاء لاستكمال قيادة وطننا العزيز. ولقد حاولت بقدر استطاعتي أن أجنب بلادنا خطر الانزلاق نحو الكارثة، والآن تمر بلادنا بمنعطف خطير قد يهدد بقائها.
Sudan had been undergoing a fragile journey towards civilian rule since the 2019 ouster of autocrat Omar al-Bashir, but was plunged into turmoil when military leader General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan launched his coup on October 25 and detained Hamdok. Hamdok was reinstated in November 21 under a deal promising elections for mid-2023, but local media recently reported he had been absent from his office for days, with rumors swirling over his possible resignation. Mass protests against the coup have continued even after Hamdok was reinstated, as demonstrators have distrusted veteran General Burhan and his promise to guide the country towards full democracy. Protesters have also charged that the deal to reinstate Hamdok simply aimed to give a cloak of legitimacy to the generals, whom they accuse of trying to continue the regime built by Bashir. In other news, 5 people were killed and 21 were injured in a bus accident south of Moscow in the early hours of Sunday, according to Russian authorities. Russia's Federal Road Traffic Inspection Agency said the accident took place at around 5:45 a.m. local time in Ryazan region. As a result of the accident, 5 people died, 21 injured, according to the agency on Telegram, adding that 2 of the injured were underage. It said the injuries were of various severity. The agency said the bus could have hit a pillar by a railroad bridge. The accident took place on a highway near the village of Voslebovo, around 270 kilometers south of Moscow. There was a total of 49 passengers on board, according to authorities, and police said it had opened a criminal case on violations of traffic rules. And U.S. President Joe Biden on Sunday reassured his Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelensky, that Washington will respond decisively if Russia moves to invade its pro-Western neighbor, according to the White House in a statement. With the Russian military buildup on Ukraine's borders, Biden made clear to Zelensky during a phone call that the U.S. and its allies and partners will respond decisively if Russia further invades Ukraine. That is according to White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. The show of U.S. support for Ukraine comes days after Biden warned Russian President Vladimir Putin of severe consequences if Moscow launches a military invasion. In his call with Zelensky, Biden also stressed Washington's commitment to the principle of nothing about you without you, in an apparent reference to the need to include Ukraine in negotiations about its own future. Zelensky tweeted afterwards that he appreciated the U.S.'s unwavering support and that the call proves the special nature of the two countries' relationship. High-ranking U.S. and Russian officials are due to sit down on January 9 and 10 in Geneva to discuss the crisis. Earlier this week, President Biden spoke to President Putin, the two leaders' second conversation by phone in 3 weeks as tensions mount over Ukraine. Discussing the call with Putin on Friday, Biden said, quote, "I'm not going to negotiate here in public, but we made it clear he cannot, I'll emphasize, cannot invade Ukraine." The U.S. leader added in remarks to supporters or reporters during a holiday stay in Delaware that he had made it clear to President Putin that we will have severe sanctions and that they will increase the presence in Europe with NATO allies if Russia invades Ukraine. Psaki also said in Sunday's post-call statement that Biden reaffirmed the U.S.'s commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The U.S. leader additionally expressed support for confidence-building measures to de-escalate tensions in Donbas and active diplomacy to advance the implementation of the Minsk agreements. Under the Minsk agreement brokered by France and Germany, Ukraine agreed to carry out political reforms, while Russia agreed to end its support for pro-Russian separatist rebels. And we'll be back with the business news right after this.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back. The Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, is expecting minimal impact on businesses as the National Capital Region reverted to Alert Level 3 until January 15. DTI Secretary Ramon Lopez said during the Laging Handa public briefing that the difference in terms of allowed sectors in Alert Levels 2 and 3 is minimal, and most business establishments are open but with lower operating capacity level. Let's listen in.
Okay, sa tingin po natin, hindi po masyadong malaki ang epekto nito. Dahil naalala ninyo, nung tayo rin ay gumalaw mula Alert Level 3 nung bandang, I think, November last year, papunta sa Alert Level 2, nabanggit din natin na may kaunting pag-improve lamang dahil ang difference in terms of sectors open ay minimal na lamang, no? Ang malaking kinaiba lang nito ay yung mga operating capacity, as mentioned ninyo kanina, ay of course binaba by mga 20 percentage points. So yung dating 70% outdoor naging 50%, at yung dating 50% indoor naging 30%. So we're now talking of 30 and 50. Pero maalala ninyo na since this is NCR, at over 70% ay bakunado na dito sa NCR, may additional 20 percentage points. So sa mga operating capacity. So ang total sa indoor can be 50%, kung may safety seal 60%, may additional 10. So sa 60%, I think magandang allowance na ito sa operating capacity at I think itong maganda sa alert level system natin ngayon, it allows all businesses to continue to operate, no? Maliban lang do sa yung hindi na in-exclude natin. Binanggit ninyo kanina, no, na iilan lamang yon yung mga sa funfair areas, gaming establishments, at mga indoor entertainment, karaoke bars. So kaunti lang itong mga nabawas or naisara uli na sektor. But practically all the other MSMEs and service-oriented businesses, including the gyms, the cinemas, etc., ay allowed pa rin naman sila ngayon. Of course, lower operating capacity.
The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership or RCEP agreement enters into force for Australia, Brunei Darussalam, Cambodia, China, Japan, Laos PDR, New Zealand, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, paving the way for the creation of the world's largest free trade area. According to data by the World Bank, the agreement could cover 2.3 billion people, or 30% of the world's population, contribute 25.8 trillion US dollars, about 30% of global GDP, and account for 12.7 trillion US dollars, over a quarter of global trade in goods and services, and 31% of global FDI inflows. The RCEP agreement will also enter into force on February 1 for the Republic of Korea. As for the remaining signatory states, the RCEP agreement will enter into force 60 days after the deposit of their respective instrument of ratification acceptance or approval to the Secretary General of ASEAN as the depositary of the RCEP agreement. The free trade bloc is expected to eventually eliminate tariffs on more than 90% of goods, expand market access for investment, harmonize rules and regulations, streamline customs procedures, and set common rules concerning the development of e-commerce as well as small and medium-sized enterprises, according to Business Insiders. ASEAN Secretary General Datu Lim Jokoy said the pact will open up opportunities that could catalyze the expansion of regional trade and investment. Finally, in our news, the Filipino Association in Papua New Guinea concludes the year with a Fundemic 2K Cup Championships. Ecor Telesa Quinola reports.
The Filipino Association of Papua New Guinea, or FAPNAng, resumed its battle in sports with the recent Fundemic Games 2K Medical Cup. After a month break due to COVID restrictions, the event finally pushed through with the championship games and awarding of the winners held at FAPNAng Clubhouse. Headed by the officers of the association, the sports competition brought back the excitement and enthusiasm of our kababayans to take part in this activity. The highlight of the event was the basketball championship for Category B Eagle Division. Team Titans won over Digital Billboard Panthers with a 3-point lead with a score of 84 points against 81 points. Meanwhile, in Category C Hawks Division, Sammy Lodge Slashers Reborn made 89 points that defeated Gems Chemical, who garnered 83 points. In Category B Old Star Division, Edison Steadfast Engineering was hailed the winner with a great difference of 35 points lead over the wine merchant Kabayan Store. The final score was 90 points against 55 points.
Another season, lalaro ulit ang Titans at i-defend namin sana. Masaya ngayon ang Titans dahil sa loob ng 7 years, makakuha namin ang campeonato. And ang preparation na ginawa namin is mostly emotional preparation kasi lang kami.
Maverick Soriano, the PRO of FAPNAng, said that this event was a success regardless of the struggles and difficulties they've met along the way. They are all looking forward for a better 2022 full of activities, hope, and enthusiasm for our kababayans living in Papua New Guinea.
We do so happy that Papua Council organized a thing like this. Though we have difficulties on our pandemic that happened, but fortunately we're able to finish this. And though we have a hard time, we still finish with success. What we are looking forward for this 2022 is we are more better, bigger, and we will give more events like this. We will give more passion to serve, and at the same time to make sure that the FAPNAG will be stable.
During this pandemic, bringing Filipinos together in healthy competitions signifies how we truly respect, value, and love our cultural roots. FAPNAG officers are now ready to welcome 2022 with staging more events, fundraising activities, and projects in the pipeline. May our 2022 be the best year ever. Happy New Year to one and all. Reporting from Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, this is Echo Hortaleza Quinola, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thanks, Echo. As always, I'll end the day on a thoughtful note. Challenges may often come our way, but sometimes it takes a good fall to know where we really stand. This has been Eagle News International. Stay alert and stay informed because we live in interesting times. Good night.
Chika!
Hindi ako makakatulog pag di ko nalaman kung ano yung chika! May isang aktor, tapos...
Sulap! Sulap!
Ang inyong pinakabagong gag show.
Dito sa Net25,
Walang iba kundi ang...
Vision
Iba't ibang sakuna at kalamidad ang nararanasan ng bansa. Kapag may banta ng panganib, kailangang maging alerto at kung kailangang lumikas ay magtungo sa ligtas na lugar. Bilang paghahanda sa mga ganitong pagkakataon, mahalaga na may gobag na dadalhin ang pamilya. Narito ang dapat na nilalaman ng gobag ng isang pamilyang handa. Mahalagang dokumento sa selyadong lalagyan, flashlight, kandila, posporo at silbato, radyo na may bago at ekstrang baterya, first aid kit kasama ang panlunas sa lagnat, LBM, sugat at iba pa. Ang mga gamot na regular na iniinom ng pamilya. Mga gamit para sa mga sanggol, bata, matatanda at may kapansanan. Pera at mga barya. Pagkain na madaling ihanda, di na kailangang lutuin at sapat para sa 3 araw. Inuming tubig sa saradong lalagyan at sapat para sa 3 araw. Telepono, power bank at charger. Lubid, lumang dyaryo, matitibay na lalagyan, damit, kapote, bota at mga sanitary supplies, sleeping bag o banig at mga kumot. Suriin ang mga laman ng gobag kada 3 buwan at palitan ang mga laman nito na malapit ng masira. Ilagay ang gobag sa lugar na madali itong makita at makuha sa oras ng sakuna.
Ang susunod na programa ay rated PG. Ito ay nangangailangan ng patnubay at gabay ng magulang para sa mga batang manonood.